Hi, it's me again. I'm back with another video. Wow, this is so disrespectful. All right, so with a new ring light, obviously. Hopefully the lighting is better. So I've got the mic and the lighting and everything down. So hopefully I'm giving like a real YouTuber, like serving, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about today is not the original subject matter, which was the raking grifters, because as I was researching that one, I just got so emotionally drained and like it wasn't good for me. So maybe I'll do it in the later time, maybe like at the end of the year. Who knows? But like I just don't like editing anymore. Like filming is more fun for me. So if I have to sit through and edit like all that stuff, it won't be as entertaining or engaging for me. So kind of checked out on that front. So now, today I wanted to talk about like y'all really just don't like women. And the reason I got inspired to talk about this topic is because for some reason I keep getting all these suggestions on my IG feeds because I don't use TikTok about certain content like feminine rage and a girl's girl and all this other stuff, and it's just like been exhausting for me to see because I don't really it's not that I don't like it, but a lot of the content seems very catered to this modern perception of like womanhood and more impossible standards that I don't think most people are going to meet. I'm non-binary, but like I'm AFAB and I was raised and socialized as like a woman growing up. So I have a lot of nuanced takes on this discussion. What I want to show is first sexism. The first thing I want to talk about is sexism. Sexism is super obvious, and when I think of sexism, I think of how like boys are like raised to be crazy, go fun, and just do the most, and girls have to be like quiet and to themselves and respectful and delicate and dainty. And like I work as a teacher, so I see this, and you know most of the students who have like behavioral problems or certain characteristics are always the boys, and the girls are just not that way. And it makes me really, really sad because I feel like girls should be able to express themselves in the same way as boys. Like the only time I see girls that are my students express themselves in a very strong way is like during break time when they're separated from the boys because they usually go play in a different area. And I think that that's a bit depressing that even in the classroom is like not really a safe space for expression for like AFAB people. But I want to talk about sexism first, and I'm going to include the title card or the text box to cover this part. And it's sexism is a noun defined as prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination, typically against women on the basis of sex. So that just means when someone is perceived woman, they're going to have certain positive and negative characteristics assigned to them, and they have to behave in a certain way. And even if they do, they're still going to get XYZ treatment. With sexism, I've seen it in my entire life where when I was not presenting as my true self and I was doing more traditionally feminine things to try and fit in, I would get clocked all the time. People are like, you're very masculine, like your behavior is not like conducive to cooperation is the word that they would use. Like one of my mentors at a young age, really kind guy, but he would always tell me, like, I figured he knew I wasn't straight, but he's like, I don't understand how you're going to be able to be with a man if this is the way that you behave, or this is the way that you think, or these are the type of conversations that you want to have. He's like, it's good that you have this mindset, but there's not going to be a lot of guys who are going to tolerate XYZ thoughts or behavior. And I was like, that's true. Because, you know, I just have a very rambunctious and whimsical and dominant personality, and it's something that I've had to work on pretty much my whole life to like reel it back in, because I think the reason why I overexpressed so much outside of the home is because I wasn't able to express myself at home. So when I went to other places, it will always be dialed up to like 50. And I'm at a point where I don't want to shrink myself to be accepted by other people. But at that point, I was working on that and trying to do that. Even though I think it's important that I don't shrink myself, I always, you know, try to be aware and accommodating to other people's needs. And I try and be sensitive in that way to make sure that what I'm doing or saying isn't too much for that person. Because if it's making them genuinely uncomfortable, then I think it's best for me to separate myself from them, because I'm at this point in this age where it's not worth it to keep trying to be friends or in a relationship with somebody who can't handle me at my 100%. But back onto the sexism topic, I think as time goes on, the issue just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And that's simply because when sexism presents itself, people who are AFAB will keep meeting and trying to excel at those unrealistic requirements. So say it's like, oh, you talk too much. Then people swing the pendulum and they overcorrect, and then they don't talk enough. And then it's, oh, you're so quiet, you need to be more assertive. And then people do that, and then it's, oh, you're BITCH or other things. So the goalpost is always moving and it can't be met. Not for anybody, not for regular people, not for celebrities, not for even babies. It's just very unfair. And I think that as a society, it's come to a point where like even hyper-femininity is demonized. Next, building off of sexism, I want to talk about some of the impossible standards. The newest one has been like this term girls girl, which started out, I think, genuinely as a good thing to be like, hey, you need to fall in line and make sure that you're putting yourself and other women above XYZ criterion that men put forward. But then it became this policing tool to say like, oh, if you're not doing this, then you're not a girl's girl. So like the biggest example that I saw was what's her name? I don't know. I'll probably include the picture, but there was this woman and she said or did something or whatever where I guess she behaved in a way that was like, oh, she's not a girl's girl. I'll use the better example because that was a random person and they were not a celebrity. I'll talk about Ariana Grande now, or Grandy. How do you say it? Grandy. I think it's Grandy. She has been getting like the whiplash for that because she cheated on her spouse and the affair partner also cheated on their spouse and they got together and they're like, oh, she's not a girl's girl. And I'm like, okay, that's a good standard to set. But then it slowly trickled down into the point where regular people, where they blink wrong or they walk wrong or they breathe wrong. And it's like, oh, you're not a girl's girl. And it's just, you can't base someone's entire personality off a 1 minute clip on the internet. So I think we're not giving people enough credit. I think, women's rights, women wrong. I know that's like a meme, but it has to be pretty atrocious for you to then go out and give somebody that label. Otherwise, I just feel like it's unfair and evilly targeted random people because who knows how they are off the camera. We don't really see the whole dynamic play out, and sometimes people are just trolling on the internet for points. Next, the next topic is not girls but pick me, and this term I feel like gets thrown around more and more and more. Like, I'm into K-pop and I love manga. I read manga all the time, and recently I've been into manhwa, and I know like a lot of the cultivation novels I've been reading too. Oh, so much. But one of the terms that I see is like green tea, and apparently that's like the pick me for that culture. And every time I see this, it gets annoying to me because like green tea has very clear outlines for it where it's like, oh, this girl is trying to behave like an angel while secretly doing like devilish things and putting other women down. That's very clear. But I feel like the term pick me originally was like a girl who's doing things for male validation and ultimately devolved into, oh, she sat with her legs crossed or she's being too feminine. Pick me, pick me, pick me. And it's like most of this stuff is done for the female gaze. So how is this being pick me behavior? Especially like if there's lesbians and stuff or, non-binary people involved. I'm like, how are they a pick me? They're not doing this for male attention. So I just feel like what is it called? Everything is lost. Like we don't got a clear outline for what this is, and the outlines and boundaries just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And I think it's definitely just a heinous term at this point used to put other people or feminine persons down. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I had to go get my laundry. Basically, like, I feel like it's just turned into a new term slang that we can just throw around to put down women, especially women who exhibit hyper-femininity. Moving on to my next point, hyper-femininity. I feel like any form of expressed femininity that goes beyond the norm is immediately labeled in a bad way. And I'm not talking about like people who pretend to be babies or little kids. I'm talking about like I guess you could say like traditional feminine cutesy behavior. So say like people who sit down gently or eat very pleasantly or walk in a hyper feminine way. Those people always get targeted in the comments where it's like, oh, they're doing too much, or this is definitely for male validation or whatever. A clear example of this, I think, is Wonyoung. I'm not a big fan of her, but I remember when she was eating the strawberry, that turned into like this big controversy because people are like, oh, who eats a strawberry like that? Clearly, this is like performative. Another example is Mion. I know Mion, I'm not a big fan of G-Idol, too problematic, but I do like Queen Card though. But basically, her whole personality is kind of like Sana, right? And Sana also gets a lot of hate. They're very similar in that aspect, where they're both like very hyper feminine, and they get a lot of hate for it because it's like, oh, they're doing this for male attention, da 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 da. And I'm like, and if they are, so what? But you can tell like this is genuinely a part of their personality, because anytime in the behind the scene clips they behave in that exact same way. Or like on unexpected cams or something, the way they walk, talk, and behave is like all that way. Like I remember they had like a dual episode on Sana's show, and there wasn't a lot of backlash per se, but there were definitely a lot of discussions going on about like how much of this was performative. I'm like, well, they're in a room, there's clearly staff and stuff, but who are they performing for? Each other? I don't think they're gay. So it's just like, I don't understand why this conversation keeps getting brought up and recycled. And I think it's just a new tool to like demonize women, because if you're too masculine, it's a problem. If you're just standard, it's a problem. And if you're too feminine, now that's a problem too. And it's crazy because the calls usually coming from inside the house from other women. And it just is weird to me because, you know, as a person who's like stepped back from all that and the performative femininity and whatever, I'm just like, why is this still a discussion for people who identify with that femininity and they really want this to be like who they are, or that's just naturally how they are? Why is it a problem? Why is this creating hate? Why is this generating so much discussions? Especially on Quora, like Quora and Reddit have been like, because I'm in like the K-pop uncensored subreddit, and oh my gosh, the amount of times like certain girls get brought up where it's like, oh, it's blah blah blah, pick me, and it's clearly there to like rile up, you know, hate. Yeah, I'm over the whole pick me and the whole girls girl thing, because it's so far away from where it started and the goal is not being met anymore. It's just a new tool to police women's behavior. Next is the transphobia. So we all know about the Algerian boxer who has started to sue certain right-wing figures, as she should, because she's not trans. And once again, their we always know crowd is wrong, where they just assume certain characteristics or traits that don't meet a Western white woman stereotypical like beauty features is going to be a problem. I'm just so tired of the transphobia, like the transphobia and the transvestigators and all this other stuff. The pendulum has swung so far that people will attack cis people and think that they're doing a great justice by, like, I guess if they were trans, outing a trans person. What is the point in that? Before it was Caster Semenya and now it's her. Imane Khalif. So before it was Caster Semenya, now it's Imani Khalif. It's just so exhausting. I don't know how they're not burnt out from this, to just find random people, look at their facial structure, look at, you know, their appearance and be like, yeah, this is a man, or yeah, this is a woman. And they're definitely pretending to be something they're not. And it's cis people again. So it's just really weird to me. It's so exhausting. And even with the Caster Semenya thing, like once people found out that she is a woman, right? So she's AFAB, but she has certain intersex characteristics, and they're like, see, and it's just like, what is wrong with you people? Like, even if that is true, like most, I'm not gonna say most, but a surprising majority of people do have intersex traits, just like a lot of people have certain neurodivergent traits, but it has to get to a certain range for it to be like, okay, you are this thing, but you can still be on the spectrum. And I think that is so stupid and exhausting that this conversation keeps getting brought up and keeps pulling down, willing down, and comparing certain women and their behaviors to other ones. I just think we're past the point where this is even necessary. It's really stupid. Next one is feminine rage. I don't really like feminine rage because the way that I have seen it depicted is like, once again, like the appropriate, respectable amount of anger. So when there is feminine rage, like it's always in movies and in person, like people just call it like, oh, this is a freak out or whatever. I don't think it does what it's supposed to do in the real world. In media, I think it does a decent job, but I still don't think it's accurate in its portrayal. So hopefully we'll get to a point where this thing also stops getting brought up. It's so annoying to me. I really don't have a lot to say about feminine rage, except I don't like the way that it's depicted, and especially when in real life it's presented in a certain way. Anyway, next. Oh, homoeroticism. So this is something that I've wanted to refute for a while, because I used to see it a lot as a joke, because when I say, oh, y'all don't like women, a lot of times people are like, oh, just date a man, and I think that that's okay. But the part that I don't like is when people are like, oh, you guys have so much like tension or chemistry or blah 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 between two cis guys. Like, you projecting homosexual behavior onto them is not going to make them be like, oh yeah, I'll be more respectful to women now. Because a lot of guys, they do a lot of stuff for other male validation and approval, which I think is the opposite of this whole conversation about women, where they're doing things for male approval and men are also doing things for male approval. It's very exhausting, because I know like toxic masculinity has so many drawbacks, and one of them is, you know, a lot of stuff can seem homoerotic when people point it out in the way that they're doing, where they're like, oh, like you guys clearly like each other or just date each other. Then especially if there's like a video, and these are popular, I'm not gonna bring up specific ones because I'm assuming most of these people are minors, and I'm tired of seeing it. No matter how much I get hit non-interested, I guess Instagram just shows it to me as a joke or whatever, but it's like, this is just making me upset. Stop showing this to me. But it's basically like, for example, two teenage boys and they're in a bathroom with no shirt on or something, and they're in a mirror talking about like what type of women they do like or they don't like. And I remember one of the guys, this is I can't remember his name, but the guy who used to sit in the car and do it on TikTok. I don't think he was a teenager, but it's like this light-skinned guy with like blue eyes, I think, or green eyes, I'm not sure. And he's like, oh, I ain't never seen da-da-da-da. And then he came out as gay. Some people are like, see, most of these guys are actually like gay on the low, and this is why. And it's like, well, we don't want to, you know, speculate, because I don't like when people speculate about people's sexuality. Like as a joke, okay, even then, I don't really like it. Because like shipping videos, right? I tend to watch, not as much anymore, but when I was younger, I would always watch them. And I think it's because of my own repressed sexuality that I found so much entertainment and validation in that. But then I feel like on the other end of it, when people are shipping other people, it can ruin their relationship, because it's like, oh, if I look at you one way or this or that, people are going to like assume that we're gay or we're fucking. And so I see both sides of this argument, but it's so annoying, because like even if that person is gay, like you're making like hour-long compilations about this person's sexuality, even if it's for entertainment only, like eventually that type of stuff is gonna reach the person and they're gonna see this, and I don't think that they will be comfortable expressing themselves in the way that they used to, especially like men or women who act outside of the norm. Like, what's her name, the girl from Fifth Harmony? I know she spoke up about this because people used to ship her with the racist, and oh sorry, I can't say her name, I don't like her, but the racist girl who had to get racist training to not be racist, and she was actually bisexual. So I think she's a lesbian, I'm not sure, but she was queer. And she said that it ruined their relationship, because then she's like, I know that I'm not straight, but this girl is clearly straight, and people are saying that we like each other, and it's creating tension. So ever since then, it's like I weaned myself off of that content. Even though I do find it entertaining, even now, I realize like this has a lot of damaging impacts. So I think we should stop, you know, trying to homoeroticize everything and every interaction. I don't think that it's healthy, because then it creates this dynamic, especially in countries where it's not acceptable, like in K-pop too. Because I remember I used to like watch all the Zeri videos, like Zayn and Harry. I don't know their sexualities. I'm not going to speculate. And I think it's very damaging to speculate on people's sexuality, because as a person who I've had that happen to me, I wrote in a little notebook. I think I talked about this in a previous video, but I wrote in a little notebook like "by?" And some like my notebook, I guess it ripped. It was hanging off of the bag, you know, like those mini keychain notebooks. I don't know why I wrote it in there, but it ripped off. It fell, and then someone found it and they knew it was mine. And then they came up to me and was like, "Everybody knows." And I'm like, "Huh?" Like everybody knows that you're gay. And I'm like, I'm gay? How did they know? So I'm just like making up excuses, and I'm like, oh, you know, like biceps. Yeah, I was looking up like how to exercise biceps, so I was trying to figure out how to spell bicep, so I just wrote "by?" And then someone else came up to me, and because I was lying, I forgot my original lie, and I told them something about a bicycle, and they're like, oh, but the other person said it's about biceps. So I was like, oh, I'm cooked, it's over. They know. So I think it's very damaging too for people to do that, because, you know, even with me, like I've always been like more gravitated towards feminine people. Like I really like femininity as a attractive spectrum, but I also don't like penises. So that's how I knew like, okay, I'm definitely gay. So when I see people speculating, I'm like, I didn't like it when it happened to me. So why am I watching these videos? Why am I consuming this content? Like as a friendship, I think it's okay, but a lot of people do it romantically, where they add in all these edits and this music and slow stuff down and do it in a specific way. And I think that is very damaging, because even if it is true, like I think the recent example, like one that I used to do a lot, I don't really like BTS, but I used to love the Tay Cook videos, which is like Tay and V, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're definitely gay. This is, and then like the Dispatch stuff, and then I realized, okay, this is very unhealthy. Why am I sitting here obsessing about two grown men who may or may not be in a relationship? Most likely aren't, because they're in a group together, and how damaging would that be? Especially when like K-pop, there was a group called K-pop where that did happen, and one of the members cheated, and it completely blew up the whole group, and there was just a bunch of drama revolving around that. So I'm just like, okay, breathe, take a step back, stop this behavior. So I think we should just stop, because it makes people who are queer no better than trans investigators when you're like projecting sexuality and emotions and behaviors onto most likely cis het straight people. So I just don't think it's that good. So my opinion on this whole topic is just let it go. It's okay for people not to be gay. It's okay for people to be gay. It's okay for people to be trans. It's okay for people not to be trans. It's okay to be cis. It's okay to not be cis. I think the point is genuinely at the deep down of this, we need to stop projecting certain things onto other people. And I know it's exhausting because there's not a lot of representation, but we shouldn't actively seek out and expose or out people to get that representation, because then I think it's doing more damage than good. And especially with femininity, I think that people who are able to express themselves in that way, it should be completely tolerated and accepted, because on the complete opposite of that, we've had this bro chad like da culture for so long, and it's had its representation. So I think it's only fair for the pendulum to swing the other way, and we also get representation for everyone else. And by everyone else, I mean probably the majority of people. And femininity, I just think that it's only fair that we have that age of femininity being represented and it not being demonized so much, because there's a lot of rules for masculinity because of toxic masculinity, but I don't think that we should also go down this cycle of toxic femininity. Just let people express themselves in the way that they express themselves, and let's move on from this topic and hopefully be better people. All right, so I'm probably going to add in more comments on the mic and any more definitions and stuff that I think aren't necessary. But for now, I'm going to say, so I'm not going to talk about the next video, sorry, because I don't know if I'm going to do it or not, but peace.